Okay, so we're here for Resilient Breeze with Joel Daniels, and he is the founder and chief advocate of Revolution Benefits Group. And I want to hand the mic over. And we've just done a little intro of the library, so here we go, Joel.
Thank you, Alana. So, hey, I thought that it would be a really good case study in upper limiting by making sure that every possible thing went wrong today. So I'm going to keep it going, and hopefully I don't drop my phone or do something else. And we're going to explore a little bit about the things that, I've experienced in life along the path to get to kind of where I'm at today. And I want to admit fully that I don't feel like I'm exactly where I want to be yet. But there's been enough resources, both in books and study, as well as in my tribe, that we've kind of collected each other over the past couple decades or so. That is definitely keeping me on this path. So first and foremost, I want to acknowledge those of you that are on the call. And unfortunately, because of my current setup, my computer decided not to cooperate with me today, so we're on the phone. So unfortunately, I can't see everybody, but I appreciate you being here. So I want to share a story because I feel like a little bit of the background is helpful to understand where I came from. And I was really inspired to be a little bit more vulnerable when speaking, thanks to some folks that are in the tribe. And so I'm going to start with a little story. And I'm a big fan of music, all genres. We're going to be referring to 90s hip hop from time to time today. So there's a song back in the day called "Back in the Day When I Was Young." I'm not a kid anymore, but some days I wish I was a kid again. I do not wish I was a kid again. I like who I am a lot better today. When I was a kid, I took on a lot of baggage, and understanding where the baggage comes from, I think, is a fundamental way to start unpacking the baggage, especially as we find ourselves, facing upper limit problems. And so, because essentially, we'll talk about upper limiting a little bit more in a bit, but a lot of these things can keep us stuck, in a mindset or, where we feel like we're not really able to move on or get out of the situation that many of us refer to as a rut. So first and foremost, fundamentally, as we all kind of explore where our goals are, where our trajectory is, where we want to go, I think it's critically and fundamentally important to understand where these limiting beliefs, these barriers come from. And a large portion of my challenges came from, my childhood. So we're going to go over to fake news here.
Would you like me to start sharing? I can't hear you. Could you turn your...
Was I talking on mute?
No, just for about 5 seconds.
Okay, that was strange. Okay, cool. Yeah, if you could start sharing.
Okay, sounds good.
Perfect. So let's click on that first slide. Back in the day when I was young.
Okay. What I want to do is get us into... There we go. We don't need to see all those tabs. Okay.
Yeah, so kind of just revisiting this again, understanding the baggage, understanding kind of the thoughts that are put in our mind. The first topic was fake news. Fake news has made the media quite infamous these days. It's been around for a long time. Back in the day when I was young, the message was essentially that I was going to be dead or in jail by the age of 18. So at the age of 16, like Tupac said, I felt it was me against the world. And so essentially, with that mentality is how, I viewed life at that time. And I was thankful that I was voluntold to get out, and kind of change, my trajectory, because at this point I thought I just really had, one choice. I thought that, or actually two choices, death or jail. And that's kind of the path that I thought was laid out before me. My brother, though, took me, helped paint some perspective, in life. And let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, Oregon Bound. So I was essentially voluntold to move up to Southern Oregon. So in 1996, you know, I was told to pack my bags, and we started a long truck because my brother rather was a truck driver. So we drove from Oxnard, California, up to Oregon. Very long drive in a truck, you know, a big truck. You know, some people enjoy that type of drive. I thought it was very sleepy at the time. I came to appreciate, though, you know, that experience with my family, you know, taught me a lot of things. You know, first and foremost, it taught me how to view myself, and also how to view other people, because I had a lot of rage and hate in myself at that point. You know, I experienced a lot of hardship, racism, all the things. And because of that, I had a certain mentality versus, you know, other races, including Hispanics. And by the way, I'm half Mexican, so figure that one out. So, you know, one of the first fundamental truths that you know, this person who became a pivotal part of my tribe, and we'll be, you know, revisiting tribe in our community and our village, you know, quite a bit through this discussion. This individual, you know, first and foremost taught me that I was a Christian before I was a black man, or whatever category that I'm placed or you know, would place myself in. He also told me to stop making that face, because I don't know if you guys know the face, but like, you know, when you're acting all hard, you kind of furrow your brow and you put the rocks in your jaw and all that. He explained to me that I needed, as a Christian, again, to be approachable and Christ-like, so and hospitable. Many of y'all don't even know this about me. I wasn't hospitable. I wasn't approachable. I was very shut off from outside, which again, you know, this is a fundamental part of the story and how, you know, where we're at right now, because if I kept on and held on to the same mentality, there's no way I'd be on this path today. And then lastly, I had a degree of control of the path that I chose. So that being said, you know, this was, again, the foundation of the community that I was going to be starting to build. On the positive side, I had community already, and, you know, many of those individuals I still am in contact with, and I got a lot of love for them because there's a lot of great degree of protection during this time. But ultimately, when I moved back to California, because there was a girl that had broken my heart, and I wanted to go ahead and head back there, I was allowed to leave on my own free will because I was very independent and nobody could tell me what to do. But my sister-in-law really made me promise that I wouldn't go back to trifling, as she put it. So, you know, we head back to California, and this is really where the path begins, you know, and, you know, because I decided to hold on to that promise, even though I didn't really fully, you know, wasn't able to reach the heights that I really wanted to. And by the way, I did end up getting the girl because apparently I'm really charming. So she became my wife, and we celebrated 21 years this year. So that's fun. So let's go ahead and move on. So, you know, again, kind of revisiting, you know, the baggage. You know, our tribe and the voices that we allow in can influence our path. And ultimately, we have to really understand that there's still a choice. So my first big break, though, came when I accidentally got a job at this really great place called Kinko's. This photo shoot right here, by the way, is actually from one of the commercials. They used to have those aprons, and I was the torso model, you know, for them. But I actually, you know, held down a job here for a while. And, you know, this was the first company that really, you know, had me feeling like, you know, I had an opportunity. One of the things that they asked me when you know, I changed from, you know, being a temp to a full-time person is essentially, what did I want to be when I grew up? That was like a time that I felt like huge, because I didn't know what to say. So at this point, I was like, okay, well, shoot, I'll be your Huckleberry. I'll be the president of Kinko's. And so, you know, at that point, you know, when they said, okay, let's go to work, and they started pouring development in me, they, you know, they sent me to courses on to, like, you know, Cubby and all, you know, knock your socks off, you know, customer service and all these other things. You know, this is the first time that folks invested in me in this way, in my opinion, at least, towards my personal development. So I allowed them to develop me, but I still hadn't figured out the importance of developing myself, because essentially this is just when, you know, I started to believe that this was possible. So this was really truly kind of the beginning of my professional path, because, you know, without the circle of folks, and here you see in the background Gail, who was a huge fan of mine during this time. She was an executive in in the department that I was in, you know, her and other people like her, you really, you know, instilled in me belief, but I still didn't own it myself because I still had, you know, those upper limits. So let's go ahead, but this right here really taught me the beginning of you know, community, even more so when it came to on the professional side. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So, you know, the Kinkos, we're going to be on getting, going, giving, or yeah, getting, going, giving. So, the Kinko's experience was an amazing one. It didn't last. FedEx bought us, you know, bought Kinko's, and you know, a lot of things changed. You know, my wife and I moved to Utah. You know, we were there for a little ways, and I started learning how to become a leader there, because instead of just supervising a unit of people, I was responsible for leading an entire organization. However, I didn't really become a leader there. I developed bad habits. I learned, you know, what not to do in leadership. And so when I had my next opportunity, which was, you know, over at another company, an amazing company called Sidcor, I was given this book, The Go-Giver, by one of my colleagues, because he saw me struggling. And the culture and the tribe there at Sidcor was an amazing one, because one of the key values of that organization was self-development and development of people, which included developing ourselves and also developing one another. And so, and you know, I heard Tanya speaking about this earlier, but values, you know, when a company creates a culture that is driven by its values, you know, engagement is really high, and you have individuals that are helping themselves. So again, the tribe of Sidcor was crucial. And guess what? Much of the tribe at Sidcor were former people that we used to work at Kinko's. So they brought a lot of that culture with them. One of the chairmen of the board was a senior executive of Kinko's. So, you know, you can kind of see the continuation of tribe. And one of the things, the fundamental truths that I had to learn at this time as a young leader within this organization was the importance of not being a go-getter, because clearly I had ambition, but, you know, but focusing on others. And, you know, one of the things that I still struggle with at times, which might be surprising, is pride. So during my developmental years, I had rocks in my jaw. I had the look, because I had this "don't mess with me" attitude, because I had a false sense of pride, more holding on to my little, you know, my little piece of comfort, versus actually being proud about a specific thing. And I had to get over that and get over myself, because I was always afraid of looking like a fool. One of the great quotes in this book, and there's so many. It's such a quick read, guys. So I mean, if you feel like you're struggling and getting where you need to be, you know, this is such a beautiful book. You know, the quote was, you know, sometimes you feel foolish, even look foolish, but you do the thing anyway. And so the concept here is you know, this young go-getter, you know, felt foolish serving people in a certain way, and it was very uncomfortable for him, but he did so anyways, even though he didn't really understand why he was doing it at the time. But at the time, he's being basically groomed to do better. And then another. So let's go ahead and move over to 5 laws, please. Shout out to Austin Wagner, by the way. Hopefully one day you see this video. Thank you for that book. That was a game changer for me. So, you know, I'm going to encourage you guys to, you know, as part of this, actually, to, in addition to picking up the book, one of the challenges that the you know, protagonist here in this book was challenged with is learn one of the rules, and then you know, actually focus on applying it. So if one of these rules is appealing to you as we kind of, you know, walk through them, I would encourage you to like, you know, find a way to apply it today. And so the first one is on value. We're all about value. Your worth is determined by how much you give in value rather than how much you take in payment. So I'll read that again. Your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than what you take. So fundamentally, for those that know me, that I've connected, I hope that my actions, you know, are incongruent with these words. my intent, since I learned this important lesson, is to do that, to add more value to others in what I get. And, you know, fundamentally, even, you know, I don't want to discount the positive things that happened in my childhood, because this fundamental law was something that both parents tried to instill. Along the way, I let the outside voices influence that, where I was focused more on myself, but which is kind of a natural thing for most of us to do. If you think about it, a lot of us are wired to think about what's in it for me. So, you know, that said, you know, we have to make sure that we rewire our brains in a way that focuses first on others, because legit, that's how we are created. Like there's endorphins that are released, scientifically proven, when we do good towards others. So, you know, thinking about it from a purely selfish standpoint, if you believe that you're worthy of feeling good, one way that you can fundamentally feel good yourself is by doing something good towards others. That's why many people volunteer. You know, when I was going through really tough times with COVID, just recently, I can't tell you how many people blessed me just with words and encouragement and all these other things. And they had no intent of getting anything out of it. You know, I think of you know, my networking group, Mark and Star Collision Auto Works. You know, he didn't have to, you know, bless me with some knowledge. And just seeing his example and the example of his organization and what they were able to do for the community, his business grew because he was so focused on what they can do for the community versus what they receive. So the perfect, you know, example of that situation. The law of compensation. So your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So again, this isn't just about sales. It's not how many new accounts that I can get. It's how I can serve my community. You know, I'm hoping in a way that, you know, this, you know, presentation is a way that I'm able to serve. So I'm hoping that it's, you know, played back by individuals that are really wanting to better themselves, better their organization, better their families, whatever. But, you know, it's all about how many people we can actually touch and serve. And so there, with that correlation, you know, we do have to expand our capacity to serve too, if we intend to, if this is all about, you know, compensation and revenue, you know, as capitalists, we have to increase our capacity to serve, not with the end in mind of getting rich, but with the end in mind of, you know, really having an impact. Number 3 is the law of influence. So your influence is determined by how abundantly you place others' interests first. And so, you know, back in the day, it's funny, if y'all know that the DISC profile, D-I-S-C, back in the day at SITCOR, again, one of those personal development exercises, we all took the DISC profile exam. And, I defaulted as a C, so my brain is a little analytical. But depending on the stress of the situation, I became either an S or a D. If there was another dominant personality, I typically would take that S, role and then just show support and do that thing. But like if I'm stressed and if somebody wants to battle, man, I can be a huge D. And that's kind of funny when I say it that way. But that dominant personality is definitely present. But guess where I was at with influence? Like, I don't know that I can go any lower with influence. It didn't even trigger. And so now that I'm in a different capacity in sales, I'm having to be even more outward. And even though I don't feel like I'm this gregarious individual or anything like that, if I'm focused on other people, what they perceive in me is completely different than what I feel even myself. And so that's where I feel like my influence comes from. Alana is recommended, or rather Abigail recommended that I present here. Apparently they feel I have a degree of influence, which is really ironic when you think about how, naturally introverted I tend to be, and also, where I came from with having absolutely no influence at all. So that was really telling, again, when understanding where we're at can help us really identify how to get to the next step. And, again, the Go Giver was a huge part of, where I'm at today as it relates to developing influence. Next law is the law of authenticity. The most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. So there were times when I was trying to adopt other people's personalities, and even there in the SIDCOR days, you know, I learned the importance of authenticity, and I still have struggle for sometimes because I'm a little goofy sometimes, a little awkward, and people feel it's endearing apparently. They used to call it Joelisms. I used to just say some random stuff like, and it made sense to me, but apparently I'm the only person that talks like that. So, but at the end of the day, when you're fake, people can tell you're fake. And so if you're doing something nice for the purpose of getting something in return, or, you know, you're being like, you know, super suave with it or whatever in order to get something that you want, people can read right through that. And so, you know, making it a goal, even when it's uncomfortable, because again, going back, even if it looks foolish, just be you. And it's still something that, you know, this is the path. You know, I don't feel like I'm there. But seeing other people's example is definitely, you know, I see you with your red and purple hair, by the way. It's very authentic, Alana, so well done. And then here's the biggest one that I have a hard time with, legit. Rule number 5, the law of receptivity. The key to giving is to stay open to receiving. Man, this, again, going back to that pride thing again, you know, receptivity was really challenging for me because it's like I've got used to being a giver. You know, even this year when we experienced some hardships financially, man, you know, it used to be me that used to be like, hey, yeah, I got this, I got that, you know, whatever. But recognizing where we're at today, yeah, how much our tribe, you know, family and friends and others really came through for us was huge. And it hurts the pride a little bit, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, the worst possible thing you can do as an individual, actually, I don't know, I'm speaking hypothetically, so this is probably not the worst possible thing, but any terrible thing that you can do is not allow others the blessing of giving a gift to you. That's their own blessing. So when you are basically being closed off to, you know, to receiving from others, then you're not allowing them to reap the rewards and the blessings of that situation. So I want to just make sure that you know, I share that because that's again, being vulnerable. This is a personal weakness area of mine, and it's limiting. So let's go ahead and move on to the main slide there, please. Oh, here's another action item. Pick this book up today. And by the way, I can't see all the chat. I'm sorry, just the technology, but thank you for engaging. And I'm hoping that to create, you know, some you know, opportunity for everybody to engage and share your thoughts too. And if there's any questions that gets out there, Alana, just tell me to shut up, and I'll kind of back off a little bit. So this is a go giver.
Once we come to an actual break, I'll ask some questions, but that's up to you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just feel free. Does it serve? So next page, next slide is becoming. So in the SIDCOR world, you know, I came, you know, from struggle and trying to force people. Most folks were not really apt to follow me. So it was here that I leveled up as a leader, that I understood the importance of serving. And so this was legit my squad. This is my team of amazing people, and each one of them, you know, moved on to doing great things when I left. And these guys are phenomenal individuals, and I miss every one of you, by the way. I appreciate being part of your journey. So, you know, when I allowed myself to become a leader, then I started again believing that was possible, but still I wasn't there yet. So, you know, but here is again, you know, where I was able to level up. So let's go ahead and move on to that next beam footage. Oh, that beautiful beam footage. All right, so the EMyth. Man, this book is a lot to unpack. It's so well written. It's just kind of in story form, and it gives really great advice. You know, I started the journey of entrepreneurship in 2016. When I left, you know, I kind of had a hard breakup with the SIDCOR family, you know, because we moved here. We were living in Mexico at the time, and then we moved here back to Southern Oregon. And, you know, they wanted me to move back. And at that time, you know, being a father and all that was more important. And I just, like, who I was in California, who I was becoming in some good ways was good, but also I was so focused on career, you know, that, you know, my priorities shifted a little bit. Yeah. So you know, the EMyth actually talks about that. I didn't really focus on it in this presentation, but it also talks about, like, you know, as you're kind of stepping into a business, you know, if you don't have some of the things, you know, in line, you're not a business owner. You're basically just by yourself in a job where you're working way too much. And sometimes, you know, there are phases in business, and sometimes that's really, you know, relevant. You know, when I was looking at, so I started with you know, a carrier, Aflac, many of y'all know, and that was my foray into owning a business. The model really wasn't a fit for me. So, you know, last year I took on a business partner, and you know, we tried to do things different. Before I did that, though, I talked to one of my very first clients, and she really recommended highly that, you know, I pick up this book, because I got good at doing a thing. But just because I got good at doing a thing didn't necessarily mean that I could be a business owner. You know, so, and that's one issue the entrepreneur myth really addressed is because, you know, a lot of us get told that we're good at making cupcakes or we're good at taking pictures. But fundamentally, there are systems and strategies in a business. And if you don't have those systems and strategies in place, it becomes really difficult. And even it's still hard. So, you know, we focused on building an organization strategy, a management strategy, a people strategy, marketing and system strategy, all of these strategies, you know, that were put in place. But where I feel like I failed as a leader in my last business was, you know, not really being on the same page with my business partner on the primary aim as well as the strategic objective. And so, you know, when we think about, you know, business ownership, fundamentally, this is really important. It's more than just having a vision, but it's what do you want? Because this business ultimately is not it's not who you are as an individual. It's not who I am. It's the thing that helps me get to my primary aim. And so if my primary aim is to have an impact and to be an amazing father and to be able to, like, you know, have the freedom to travel and all these things, if my if the business doesn't fuel that, then is it really the vehicle that you need in your life? Because business is more than just a thing to make money. It's a vehicle, and a lot of us get that confused. You know, your strategic objective, how do you get to that point? You have to have that really clear, you know, in your mind. So, you know, this book was really fundamental, you know, because this at least helped me understand at the point that these things have to be in place. You know, so while initially the system that I had with the, you know, my initial, you know, step into entrepreneurship, I don't feel like it completely served my community the way that I wanted to. You know, essentially the way it was designed was, you know, go holler at a bunch of people, you know, law of numbers, you know, try to get more accounts, you know, all these things. You know, so what this book helped me analyze is when things really aren't working, sometimes it's important to take inventory, you know, of what is congruent with that primary aim. And going back to the concept of going and giving, even with that other organization, I was still focused on not focusing on quantity, but of, you know, people that I talked to, but rather quality of relationships. And as a result, you know, because of networking, BNI, conversations, and just focusing on how I can help serve others, people, I hope at least, you know, got the impression that I was really about serving them versus just trying to make that sale. And as a result, the results started coming themselves, and still they're you know, coming. So when prospecting, instead of just asking for appointments or trying to pitch, you know, the product I'm offering that could potentially, you know, save whatever unnamed product, I focus on getting to know them and truly understanding how to help. And so that became a shift in, you know, how we were running business, but ultimately, you know, so and also identifying, you know, when things got hard, which one of the levers of businesses, rather which one of the levers as it relates to these strategies needed to be adjusted at any, you know, given time. And so, you know, the theme of this talk, by the way, is, you know, the path to ownership has terms. So it's going to seem from time to time that, you know, there's kind of going back and forth a little bit. And part of that is simply because it's like, this is not a straight line. It wasn't a straight line for me. And I'm hoping it's not confusing too many folks. But essentially, you know, this this specific book really helped me understand the structure of business. It created a framework, you know, of the business at that time, at each kind of iteration of the business, even up to where we're at today. So January 2020, you know, we started a new business, Revolution Benefits Group, and you know, the framework and the lessons that were gleaned over the past, you know, since 2016, you know, really helped propel us so that instead of spending a year building a business, we were able to fast forward that, understanding again what the structure was. So, you know, I share this because some folks, you know, may be going through challenges with their businesses. You know, one of the things that is fundamental to do is take inventory of where you're at. When you understand where you're at, you can identify, and also where things are going. I heard yesterday, you know, said that understanding where the puck's going. So when you're able to see where you're at and understand also where you're going, you know, and identify kind of the components of your strategy, you can figure out what levers to pull. So, but again, fundamentally, it's really critically important to take stock and truly understand your primary aim as well as your strategic objective. Okay, so let's move on. I think I killed that. Let's move on to the next thing. Okay, so y'all remember the Outer Limit? You know, there's like a 60s show and then they revised it in the 90s. So again, these 90s references, you can tell when I grew up, mostly. So I want to, and forgive me, again, my technical difficulties are not super organized, so I apologize. Okay, so with the upper limits, there is, you know, imagine that an upper limit is like, you know, two parallel lines. Inside the parallel lines, that's where your family is, that's where things are really good, you know, this is where your job is, this is where just the situation is, and as you kind of, you know, are trying to level up in your world, things, you know, are attracted to you to kind of help keep you in those lines. How often, you know, when we're trying to level up in life, do we suddenly get sick? Or does technology break, as today has? Or, you know, we end up getting bombarded by a bunch of things. All of these are designed to kind of keep us, you know, in that really comfortable space where we are, you know, it's really truly a challenge in order to get any type of liftoff. You know, you can recognize essentially, you know, when upper limits, when, you know, behavior such as, you know, worrying, being anxious, you know, some of us have things that we cling on to, like, you know, even drinking or other things, these habits that we kind of fall into, having accidents. All of these may be, you know, symptomatic of the upper limit. So let's go ahead and start with the why. Oh, by the way, hashtag COVID does suck, because when COVID hit, man, like, talk about, you know, upper limiting. You know, I was applying for jobs, like, straight up, you know, not many of y'all know that, but I wasn't sure that we were going to be able to make it. Though I felt fundamentally that what we had was a worthy business and a worthy cause. You know, when talk about starting a new business in January, starting to get some lift off, you know, March hits, and now a lot of my clients are shutting the doors. And my lifeblood for our business is small businesses. And so, again, thankful to Tribe and Community for helping us through, you know, with messages and things like that. But let's kind of break down the why behind sometimes we upper limit. Okay, so this is hard to read. I apologize. Yeah. So a key reason why we may be upper limiting is, you know, perhaps we feel fundamentally flawed. You know, so that for me, for example, maybe there are certain attributes that I have that, you know, may make me doubt my resolve. Like, maybe I feel like I have that imposter syndrome that many small businesses, especially younger entrepreneurs, deal with right now. Disloyalty and abandonment. Like, you know, I'm betraying my you know, community if I'm leveling up. Like, you know, key example of this was, through most of my schooling, through elementary school, my teachers treated me like I was dumb. When I moved to a new school, down in Southern California, when I was in middle school, I started, actually recognizing that I wasn't dumb. I was pretty good at music and science and history and these things. So I had this embedded messaging that told me that I was dumb. And then when I started acting smart, behaving outside of that, then some members of my community were treating me like I was this nerd, or I was quote unquote whitewashed. That was literally a term that was used because I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And so stepping out in some ways can feel like you're betraying who you believe is your family, even if they don't have necessarily, well intentions perhaps, but maybe don't have the full understanding of what you're trying to do. Believing that more success brings a bigger burden. So sometimes, like, Biggie says, more money, more problems. That could be a mentality. So recently I was turned on to the concept of not looking at money as a thing, but rather as a vehicle to help serve. So for many people that are wealthy, the most wealthy, entrepreneurs in the world are very generous people. So wealth in itself is not a bad thing. The Bible says that it's a love of money that is the root of all injurious things. It doesn't say the money itself, but if that's what your primary focus is, again, as opposed to serving, then that's where the true burden comes. So that's a belief barrier that sometimes we have to overcome. And then also the crime of outshining. Sometimes our parents and siblings and others, even well-intentioned, they don't want, or even perhaps spouses or significant others or whatever. We sometimes have a fear of outshining other people, and how dangerous is that? And so these are some of the things that cause upper limit. So let's go on to that next slide, please. All right. So what do we do about it? So first and foremost, we want to recognize it that as a signal. As soon as we feel that anxiety, that pit in our stomach, or stuff starts to break down, my computer starts working, I forget that today's a presentation, I think it's tomorrow, I dropped my phone like right when we were starting. These are upper limiting stuff, so it still happens, right? So recognizing that these things happen, and that they're all part of the comfort zone. And so if you see your comfort zone, you'd be like, I see you, comfort zone, I see you, boo boo, and you try to do something else. Notice where your upper limit is and when the problem starts. So it started today around 8:30 when Charlotte was like, hey, dude, your presentation's today. Oh, dang. That happened really quickly. Thanks, Charlotte, by the way. Appreciate it. Number 3 is feel what happens when you've gone beyond the limit. Wow. So when you allow yourself the freedom to actually believe that you can surpass that limit, it's an amazing freeing feeling, and recognize that feeling is okay, and try to hold yourself in. Recognize that you're worthy of feeling good literally all of the time if you allow yourself to. Even when things are going bad, just kind of hold on to that feeling. And then be gentle with yourself if you resist. This is something I'm learning to do. Having grace with myself is sometimes the hardest thing to do, where it seems like sometimes I'm more patient with others than I am myself. By far my worst critic. So being gentle, that is something that's really critical. And then lastly, carry on the habits that brought you success. So, some of the habits that you're doing, whether it's just picking up the phone or leaving, your house, or putting your clothes on, sometimes that is an accomplishment in itself. Taking a shower, wow. Like these things sometimes are accomplishment in itself. These habits need to happen in order for you to be able to serve to your fullest capacity. So, and recognizing too that there are always opportunities to level up even more, to create and find new habits. And again, moving back to tribe, this is why it's so important to have a strong tribe behind you. Surround yourself with people that really have that same mentality of wanting to break through. So next is, I'm going to challenge y'all with the next action item. So in order to really achieve liftoff, go ahead and change that slide for me, Alana, please. In order to really truly achieve liftoff, you got to cultivate at least 3 friends with whom you can form a no upper limit conspiracy. So the word, this is taken from the book, the word conspiracy comes from 2 Latin roots that together mean to breathe together. So this is a kind of conspiracy that we all want to achieve. A goal should be for us to feel the power of 2 or more people in harmony working toward a benign goal like getting through that upper limit and leveling up. So a conspiracy like this can be really good for everybody. So you and your other members of your conspiracy will continue to educate each other on the upper limit problem, and you'll each spot, other upper limit behaviors such as worrying, being sick, having accidents, etc., and gently remind each other of the value of basically that you create the quality in your life experience out of your beliefs. So when we're able to encourage each other, and we can actually literally help each other achieve new heights, break through that upper limit, and then, continue on the path of success. So revisiting this book allowed me to recognize that there was a need to pause, to evaluate, the business and ensure that it was aligned with our strategic objective as well, which ultimately was to have an impact, a positive impact on our community. So many of y'all that know my business know that our mission is to make an impact on our community by providing access to affordable healthcare that people can actually use. So that's our mission. And recognizing our upper limits, my upper limits, allowed me to shift the focus on how to do that better. And it gave me the courage to have a needed conversation with folks that, I felt perhaps scared of inconveniencing, hurting, or whatever, because I chose a new path that may actually impact their worlds. So because I had to recognize who truly I served was the community, the members of the community, the small business, the entrepreneurs, the businesses, as well as the people that they serve. That's my audience. So recognizing that, allowed me to get out of my own way. And it also, also recognizing where my strengths and my weaknesses are, as well as my zone of genius, which is one of the things, the book talks about, is understanding your zone of genius. My zone of genius is my ability to serve others. So when I'm able to live in that space, then I'm able to achieve greater things. So essentially, this allowed me to focus on my zone of genius, which is my ability to be a go-giver. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. By the way, do this action item. It's really important. Okay, so I'm a real boy. That's what the last slide is, talking about me being a real boy. Essentially, the message here is repeat. Why repeating is so critically important is because this path that we're on will continue to turn. This quote is money for me. So you can't measure your success by whether or not you get the account. That's not the point. The point is not what you do, not what you accomplish, it's who you are. So these principles that I've learned in my studies and also through my community have helped me become the human being that I am today. It's a iteration of who I want to be, which is the best version of both ends that I possibly can be. So let's move on to the next slide. These are some quotes that I wanted to make sure that you leave here with. From the Go-Giver, receiving is a natural result of giving and being okay with it. So this is my personal message to y'all is be okay with receiving. If you're giving, it's just a natural result. Let's move on to the next one, please. So plan, then act. So this is from the EMyth. The difference between great people and everyone else is that great people create their lives actively, while everyone else is created by their lives, passively waiting to see where life takes them next. We can see this right now being played out, can't we? A lot of folks are just waiting and seeing what's happening. So, I can be guilty having my C personality, the presence, in getting what's called analysis paralysis. I can be guilty of stopping and looking so hard at the problem versus focusing on solutions. And sometimes I don't even know what the answer is, but still taking one step in front of the other, usually prompted again by my tribe, because sometimes I'm scared to take that step. This is a perfect example. Ask Marisa a few months ago, she wanted me to come and talk, in front of people and stuff. And I'm like, nah. And here I am talking in front of people and stuff. Yay. So taking action is really important. We cannot sit back passively and wait for things to happen, because when things happen, they happen to you, as opposed to, and typically when they happen to you, you might think it's a good thing for a while, but there's always unintended consequences when things happen to you. So it's really important to take ownership of that. All right, and the next one. Don't stop. Get it. Again, 90s hip hop, y'all. It's a thing. I like it. Don't judge. So from the big leap, it was very humbling to realize that my worries were there just to make me miserable. It was even more humbling to realize that I was the guy who had his finger firmly pressed on the misery button. It was wonderful, though, to discover that I also had the power to quit pressing the button. So don't stop stopping, I guess, is the point of this. You know, recognize that you are your worst button pusher, and you know, try to stop on pressing the buttons. And so, yeah, I just talked for an hour almost. That's fun.
So, yeah, and I see that there are so many comments in the chat, and I held off because I wanted you to be able to go with your presentation without being interrupted. So let's go through and take a look at some of the questions. So I'm scrolling a little bit. It looks like there's a lively discussion here. So okay, so Tanya says, absolutely, value is key. Providing great value is more meaningful and rewarding than focusing on what you get. Let's see. Then Tanya, again, give and take by Adam Grant gives so many examples and hard data on how giving to others translates to more success. So Tanya, did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Giving is a huge thing. It's in my personality. It's who I am. And so I happened to stumble upon, I actually have it on my desk because I refer to it and have done posts on it. And it really is talking about, you know, the really influential people in the world aren't the big names you know. They're not the ones that are moving and shaking. They're the billionaires behind the scenes connecting everybody and giving everybody the inspiration. So like Joel was saying, you know, helping others grow their business, helping others have the tools will actually give so much more.
Yeah, and that seems like really in line with the entire theme today, you know, like be able to give as much as you take. So Joel, I'm wondering, do you have any commentary on that?
I would say word. I agree. Thank you, Tanya, for sharing that. You know, I think that, you know, fundamentally, that's what my experience has been. You know, I don't think that I'm, you know, I've achieved the level of success that, you know, really I'm hoping for my family. But, you know, I feel like, you know, that hasn't really been my focus. It's been about the community, and you know, so we're here today, you know, as all of y'all that are on this, I feel like are kind of in that same space. So you live it, you know, you live community, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Well, and the thing from Adam Grant's book is the givers initially are not the most successful. It takes time building those connections, building that tribe, building those relationships so that you have given to so many people. When they hit their stride, they're looking to give back to you. They're looking to make that next connection for you, that 3 years down the road, what was initially just a little thing, they're now turning around and giving you this huge thing in return.
Elena, can I interject here? One of my favorite anecdotes, I don't know if it's true or not, I don't know who said it, but they were talking to a philanthropist who just seemed to get richer and richer no matter how much he was giving. And he put it into a visual that's always kind of stuck with me, and that is, as he was explaining to his interviewer, he said, I keep shoveling it out, and whomever, he attributed his success to God, and you know, we may have our different feelings on that, but he said, I keep shoveling it out and God keeps shoveling it in, and he's got a much bigger shovel than I do. And so it kind of explained the growth of his resources and his wealth, but certainly he valued and recognized his responsibility to give to others. And recently I was listening to a podcast, Dr. Ivan Meisner, and he had a similar example where he talked about the idea of, if we're going to begin serving to a group of people, are we going to pick up a big spoon that can serve lots of people, or are we going to pick up that little spoon where we can serve ourselves? And the idea of being able to serve other people and putting that out there in a greater volume then allows us not only to serve others, but also to participate in what it is we're serving. So a couple of visuals that really stuck with me.
And you have a comment in the chat that was coming up just next. And so you were saying one of your favorite quotes is "give without expectation and receive without resistance."
Yeah, I think it's really key, especially when Joel mentioned that whole idea of pride and how much of an obstacle pride can be in our own lives. Receiving without resistance really offers other people that same opportunity, not just for the chemical experience of dopamine and whatever else happens when you do that, but just the spiritual connection and this idea of community and tribe that he talked about. This is just one of the key things to really establish those bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it sounds like also we've got, and I don't mean to move too fast. I just want to respect people's time and also honor that there was conversation going on in the chat. So Marta added, without that quality conversation interaction, we don't really ever truly get to making sure we're on the same page regarding the primary aim and strategic objective. Great insight.
Yeah. I want to touch on that, and Marta, I appreciate you bringing that out, and that's a reason why my last business wasn't a success, is because there wasn't really great communication on that point. And I blame myself for sure, because in general, guys are super awesome at communicating, obviously, but it should have been made more important. So I appreciate you bringing that out.
And from Marisa, yes, we have talked about this a lot. You know how I feel and how to change your money mindset, or you'll always be coming from a mindset that will leave you in lack.
Yep. Again, word. Can't really say it much better than that.
And from Joby, in business, the concept of the Peter principle is fascinating, but can be overcome. A link to a great 10-minute read on the subject. So I am happy to save the chat and share it with anybody who wants access to that later.
Please do.
Okay.
It's so good, Joel. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for stopping in.
And there are a lot of more excited chats. There weren't any questions, but is there anything coming up in people's minds right now before we kind of head on with other parts of our day that you wanted to ask or comment with your voice instead of your chat? Okay, Marta.
Joel, thank you so much for sharing on your presentation and the insights, so carefully curated. What are you reading right now?
Oh man. So that's a good question. I'm actually going back through the upper limit, because I feel like I'm still there. So I tend to go back and forth between different books. That's one I'm kind of reading through. The other one, it's funny just because. Thank you, Lisa. I picked this up again. Souls of Black Folks by W.E.B. Du Bois, however you pronounce it. I picked this up. I've never read it. I picked this up during my militant phase, because I wasn't, believe it or not, I was hyper militant. And I was inspired just recently to kind of recall some things. And I picked it up, starting to read through that too. So those two books, just for the internal and the mind, I think are important. I try to balance it. Oftentimes when I'm reading, I try to balance. It's normally nerd stuff, so it's usually a Star Wars book along with a business book. But I decided to try to be an adult or something. It's really overrated. Don't encourage it.
Thank you. Good to know.
Thank you.
And I think Marisa, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Was there anybody else who wanted to have a chance to comment or question or anything?
Well, I just had one thing to say, that out of probably anyone, I've been really resistant to reading books, listening to audibles, anything for the self-improvement. And that was really my own limiting belief, like, how much is it really going to help me? but Joel just kept nagging at me for forever. So then I finally started listening to some things, and you'd be amazed of how your mindset can really start changing around, and you start really realizing how you can elevate yourself and what you're capable of, and how you think. And it's not something that you just do and then that you stop. You have to constantly feed it and constantly do it. And so a lot of things that Joel went over today, I've learned not only from him, but from who networking and learning from other people. That's why it's also really important to surround yourself with like-minded people that are, about uplifting. And so I really like that, what he brought out about having those 3 people that really influences you. And so that was something I hadn't heard before. So I really liked that. And especially when you're doing something like starting over. I just recently moved to Florida, and I've started over like 3 times since I've been here like the last 8 months. So it's really important. So you had there's a lot of really good nuggets, and this was good.
Thanks. That's so funny. She saw me at my worst. So I was not a nice person then, and she hated me. So that's fun. But yeah, a lot of path to personal development was really huge for sharing that insight, Sarah.
I'm really excited that we've got a couple of people talking together who are kind of extending the connection and, still building community together here.
I'm glad.
I think I may have interrupted somebody. Was someone trying to speak?
This is Sue. I just wanted to say thank you to Joel. I mean, him and I have a fairly new relationship in business, and I appreciate every time I hear you speak and the things that we talk about. So thanks, Joel.
Thanks for coming, Sue. Appreciate it.
Well, also, I'm really grateful for everybody's time, and I really respect that you may all have things to do and places to go. So Joel, thank you so much for your time. And we've been talking for a few weeks about all of the things that you wanted to bring to this space, and I feel like, everything that we discussed is there and more so. And I'm really grateful for all of your time and energy, knowing that this is also a challenging time.
Sure. Definitely my pleasure. Thank you, Lana, for having us.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and close out. And again, if you need anything from library resources, recall that we shared a few resources before we began, and I will be happy to connect with you in person, one-to-one, to show you how to use those and show you other things that we didn't share. So library's here to support you. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, everybody's here. And you enjoy your day.
Thanks, everyone.